Hello, my name is Joe Aldridge, and I've been a type 1 diabetic for 7 decades.
And I'm Cam. I'm a type 2 diabetic, and you are tuned in to the Diabetes Our Way podcast, where we discuss all things diabetes related.
This podcast, we're going to share a few laughs, and you're also going to learn a lot as far as what we've experienced over our trials with type 1 and type 2 diabetes.
But please note, we are not doctors, and this podcast is for general information and entertainment. It is not any form of direct medical advice. If you or someone in your life has or may have any form of diabetes, please contact a medical professional. Hey guys, welcome to Diabetes Our Way with Joe. He's Joe.
I'm Joe.
And I'm Cam. Man, episode 3. I feel like we just did one of these, Joe.
Yeah, time goes, especially when you get older. It goes by faster and faster.
Yeah, exactly. How was your Father's Day weekend?
That's good. We actually went and saw the Indianapolis Indians play. They're a AAA team for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Great stadium, and I was there with our grandson and granddaughter, and then my son and his wife, and really had a ball, and just got to experience downtown Indianapolis on a nice evening and watch a good game.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I went down to Manning to see my folks. I surprised my dad with a big 75-inch TV. So
wow,
he loved it. I figured, it's a great Father's Day gift for him. He loves to sit and watch TV and watch his YouTube. So, which, by the way, you can follow us at Diabetes Our Way podcast on YouTube. Quick little plug in there. Yeah. But no, it was good. Kind of veered away from my diet a little bit, as you do when, you just kind of going and having a good time. But which brings us to kind of our topic today, which I thought would be interesting. We covered a lot of stats last podcast, but we haven't really talked much about how diabetes affects your relationships. And Joe, you're married. I'm single, so we get kind of a different perspective on how it works or doesn't work. I don't know if people have problems with, relationship wise, but I guess talk to me, Joe. How has it that how does diabetes affect, your marriage, your relationship?
Well, I think diabetes, when I got it at the age I got it, I never, and going back to what my dad said and my mom, I could never use it as an excuse. And so I didn't, and then I got into sales, and, you fail 90% of the time in sales. Mm-hmm. And so I was fortunate. I took a professional selling class at the University of Southern Indiana, which when I took it was Indiana State University, Evansville. And Dale Clayton was the professor's name. And he basically made a comment that you have to ask for the sale. And if you never ask a person out, you never get to that first date. But you've got to be willing to accept the no. And so, but the more you know, the better the yeses will be. And so that to me was just constantly in my mind from that standpoint. And so I just kind of, didn't have any, I could strike up conversations very well. I'm a pretty good dancer, so that was a good thing. And, so that kind of led to things. And I actually knew my wife because we went to high school together. But here's another thing that I thought, your grandma Aldridge, she made a comment once, and I think it's helped me live. Besides not being able to use diabetes as an excuse, she made a comment that I should marry a nurse. And my wife is a nurse, and she said the nurse can help you, especially when you have a disease or have an accident and stuff like that. So, that's kind of what I did. I mean, it all worked out. My wife's sister was marrying my best friend. We were both in the wedding, and we just had a great conversation at the reception and stuff like that. And then she moved to Lafayette. I basically was in Bloomington, Indiana, and then we just started to go up on the weekends, not every weekend, but up on the weekends to Indianapolis, because my best friend who married my wife's sister, they lived in Indianapolis when he was in dental school.
Okay.
So that's kind of how that all started. And, hate to admit it, but Grandma and Mom Aldridge was right.
So that was part of your criteria when you were dating, right? Are you a nurse? Nope.
Not
Okay,
really,
sorry.
not really, but it all works out very well. So yeah, maybe Cam, you ought to look for somebody in the medical field.
Yeah.
And your mom's in the medical field. Your sister-in-law.
Yeah, well, before we get into me, so early on, so she really knew how to help with your diabetes, so you didn't really have to educate
Not
on that
really.
perspective.
Not really. She doesn't
Okay.
hardly know. She doesn't know how much insulin I take off the top of her head, or what prescriptions I take, or whatever. She just knows how I'm acting and stuff like that. And
Mm-hmm.
she doesn't. She's almost like my mom and dad. She doesn't let me use it as an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to travel here. I don't want to do that. Well, no, you're going, and let's go.
Yeah.
And so she didn't. She knows how to care, but to some degree, I go back to what I said earlier in both podcasts. I became my own best doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, and sometimes I'm not a good doctor, like you did this weekend and stuff like that. But I became my own best doctor. But she could watch me, and she knew when I was going low,
Mm-hmm.
because the way my eyes were, the way I was unfocused, the way I was acting. Go test your blood sugar, those types of things. And so, but I didn't use her as a crutch. I used her as a partner, and as a partner that knows a lot about healthcare.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that that can be another issue with some marriages sometimes, if one person's diabetic and the other person's not, that there can be some frustrations and maybe resentment, like you said, maybe there's like, well, I can't do that, or I can't eat that. How would you coach or give advice on how to navigate through that, for if you're in a relationship with someone who's not in the medical field?
Um, Basically, you have to determine what you want to eat from that standpoint. If you go out to eat, it doesn't matter. The diabetic's going to order the food they order. That person will order the food they want. The key thing is what are you going to eat at home?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I learned that very often at home growing up, because once I kind of come back from college, my mom had Twinkies, Hostess ding dongs, all kind of candy. You think she raised two diabetics, and she was like a sweet queen, and
Right.
stuff like that. Well, my wife, she likes, chips, cheeses. She likes all kind of walnuts, pistachios, those types of things, and they're there. But I decide to say no.
Mm-hmm.
It's my choice. But the same thing's true, even if you weren't there at home with the person you're dating, or the person you're married to. As soon as you go to the office or to work, you could stop at Crescent Donuts or Dunkin' Donuts. You could stop at Starbucks and get a latte with extra shots of sugar and everything else. So it doesn't really, to me, Cam, it's not on the person you're marrying. It's still on you as the diabetic.
Mm-hmm.
So, what happens to the person that has cancer and then can't eat certain things, does the other person have to change their life just to make that diabetic or that person happy. Don't
Right.
look to other people to make you happy if you're not happy yourself. You have to be happy yourself before, and if you're looking to other people to make you happy, good luck with the divorce.
Right, right. I think it is interesting. It's like what you said. You have to be your own. You have to have your own discipline. You have to have your own, willpower. I don't think it would be a healthy. Yes, marriages and relationships can have to be about compromise sometimes, right?
Right.
But I don't think it's like, don't buy that because if you buy that, then I'm gonna want to eat it, and I think that's where it's just like, well, I can't have this in the house, or someone sneak in to go eat something. I don't think you should put limitations on that. For me, you know, back in the dating scene, it's always been hesitant for me to kind of mention it. I always mention it, right? Because I don't want anyone to be like, think, oh, I have to take care of you, right? No, it's not about that. I'm my own manager, but I want you to know, like, it doesn't define who I am, and I say
Right.
this, when I've gone on dates and things like that. Yeah, I'm a type 2 diabetic, so I monitor myself, but in case, and that's further down the line, that really get in a relationship, like, these are some signs, that you would notice, if I'm running low on blood sugar, you can help me. And I think it's about creating that partnership with one another. And like you said, Lisa knows whenever you are running low. I mean, when you're running low too. Like, we all diabetics know when we're running low or running high, but I think it's a good support system, right? And I feel like that person who you're with should want to encourage you to be better as well. Not to the point of micromanaging though, where it's like you go and you eat something and they're saying, "Oh, you can't eat that, you can't have that." I mean, nothing kind of pees me off more when someone tells me I can't have something, I can't do something, and I think it's just an education as well, as like you're partnering together, you're educating together, because that's what a relationship's all about.
Well, I'll differ with you. Your diabetes does define who you are.
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Why?
because
Why do you?
you learn from what's happening with your diabetes. So
Mm-hmm.
every experience you have is going to help define you, especially in the future. And so, it's you learn from what is happening now from that standpoint. I heard some great advice, and I've not always followed it, but it's, if let's say somebody says, and I had this too, a lot of my clients and friends, they know I'm diabetic, and if all of a sudden I'm drinking a beer and they say, "Hey, are you supposed to be drinking that?" Well, yes, I can drink it, but let me educate you a little bit on diabetes and how
Mm-hmm.
that works. And so there are things that I think you could use from that standpoint. But if somebody says something like that, well, you can't eat that, this and that and the other, don't say anything. Okay. Because the first thing you say out of your mouth will actually could cause an argument.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so that was the thing I was blessed with growing up, is I never saw my mom and dad, your grandma and grandpa, I never saw them argue. Okay. Now, if dad got mad, he went down in the basement. Our mom went upstairs,
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't go back and forth at each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, as somebody said, I heard this as a comedian and everything else. He's been married 6 years, and his father had been married 48 years. And he said the first thing, if she says something or does something, the first thing out of your mouth could be the divorce in the relationship. The second thing you are thinking, don't say that either.
Right.
Say the third thing, but really think about how's that going to affect the other person.
Mm-hmm.
that's very hard to do, from
Yeah.
that standpoint. They used to have this thing where they'd say, if something really pisses you off, count to 10.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing when you're thinking about, what's coming out of your mouth. That's why God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Yeah.
So think before you talk, and also too, really think about what they said and why they said it. They might, and the way they said it. It might have been, are you really supposed to eat that? Or
Mm-hmm.
you're not supposed to eat that, or maybe they're in shock with that last statement about, why are you eating that? And so.
Well, I think that's a great point, and I think it can all stem from setting some boundaries too, where you can discuss, hey, this is how I'm feeling, or this is boundaries of my diabetes management balancing, and how you make me feel like when you're micromanaging me. I think it's very important to establish some type of boundaries there, for especially someone who's uneducated. I was dating someone, and I let her know, I'm a type 2, diabetic. And she says, oh, I never dated anybody who was a diabetic before. So can you teach me, about it? So, and I thought that was great. Unfortunately, the relationship didn't last, but
Right.
I just thought that's a good way to approach it. It made me feel like, yeah, I'm important. You care about me. You care in learning about my health and where I want to go and how you can
I
help
can
and
see that.
support.
Yeah.
So I think that for that, I think that's a great attitude to have. I used to think, oh man, no one wants to date someone who's got diabetes. They just want to think that they have to take care of me, and that was my mindset for a while. I was almost not afraid, but I just didn't really want to bring it up unless it like came to it where I had to bring it up. But I know, like in this day and age, it's always important to be more truthful than anything, with especially in relationships.
Yeah, but I also think that's a generational thing.
Hmm.
It's maybe it's a generational confidence thing or whatever, but it's if people can't accept you for who you are, then go find other people.
Right.
And so that's probably what you're doing and stuff like that. But who knows? I mean, you got 2 healthy people, they get married or they start to date. Who knows what's going to happen, to this person? They might get cancer, they might
Hmm.
get MS, they might get these different things, and you don't know that. And then once they get that, then they've got to adjust to that. I
Hmm.
mean, there's amazing stats on how many people get divorced when all of a sudden their spouse gets sick or
Hmm.
gets debilitating disease and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
so it's there's an old saying, in the Bible, or the marriage vows and stuff like that. Love a person till death, good times
Yeah,
and bad times.
in sickness and in health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's a
Hmm.
lot of divorce attorneys out there, so they get paid more when there's more divorces.
Hmm. Do you grocery shop together, or does she automatically
I
know
know,
what?
no, I shop I do most of the
Okay.
shopping. So
Okay.
yeah, Lisa will go to Target and buy stuff, but I usually go to Fresh Time, and because I like to use that Yuka thing. We shop together too. We did it over the weekend. We did it
Hmm.
Saturday, but um, you know, I look at the carbs, I look at these different things, and then and then it's we tend to buy kind of the same stuff,
Hmm.
and but no, it's um, I don't I worked in a grocery store growing up and stuff like that, so I like going to the grocery store because it's fun. I mean, it's I like getting to talk to the butcher behind the counter and these
Right.
types of things, and I bargain shop too. you buy one get one free, or this and that and the other, and and so I kind of like to go, and a lot of times it's funny when we go clothes shopping. I want to get in and out as fast as I can. But when Lisa goes grocery shopping, she wants a lot of times she can fly through there and go through that one. I'm sitting there, just having a good time. Let's go look at the yogurt. Let's go look at this.
Yeah.
So it's to each their own, from that standpoint. But that's the other thing, when you if you pass away and you've never gone grocery shopping, what are you going to do?
Right.
What's the spouse going to do? So, there's certain things, but
well, I think too, it's just more so, when you are grocery shopping together, or that's how well you know each other, and know how one person manages the diabetes. It's knowing what you can buy. I mean, I don't think you should say, "Oh, don't buy this, don't buy that," but I think it's also healthy whenever that person or your spouse or your partner knows what to get and what not to get, to kind of help support. And also celebrating wins as well, celebrations in each other's life, whether it be diabetes, you're managing your diabetes at a great level, or they're going through something, as long as you celebrate the wins together. Now we talked about how much money that we contribute to diabetes, right? But would you say that would play a factor? Does that play a factor when it comes into relationships from a financial standpoint, when it comes to prescription drug costs and insulin costs and things like that?
Well, we're each on our own individual plan.
Okay.
She's on her individual plan through her work. I'm on my individual plan through my work. And so I've got to spend more just because the out-of-pocket costs, but that's on me. So that comes out of my salary, my commissions and stuff like that. And so we never really had too much of an argument about any of that stuff, So I got some great advice from a guy from our banker when we first were married and stuff like that. And he basically said, each person needs to have their own account. And then if you want to have a joint account, have a joint account where each month or each paycheck, you both put money into that. And then that's what you spend. But we have basically managed, we don't have a joint account. And so we basically, she's got certain things she pays for. I got certain things I pay for. And I'll always chuckle, when it was Christmas time and everything else, and Lisa's mom made a comment that all the girls were going to go out shopping and they were going to spend my money and this and that and the other. I said, well, I don't really care how much money Lisa spends because it's her money. It's not my money. It's her money. And so that was shocking. But of course, you're talking about our generation, but her mom was, mom would be 85 going on 90. That was a different generation there too. And so, but I thought that advice that was given by the banker was very good. And we own our home together, stuff like that. But, we try to keep things the way they are and, not have to worry about, certain things like that.
Yeah, well, today's generation, you're finding more of, they want to have the male as the provider. It's almost that kind of some people
your generation.
Well, some of the girls that I've dated, it's the man provides everything. House.
Well, you might need to move to Indiana.
But
is that a Southern thing?
It might not be generational, but there are some women out there who want the man to be the provider, where they pay all the bills and everything. And maybe, I'm just saying, from a standpoint, where that could get into a problem, because if I have all these expenses on my medical side of things, but then you want to go on vacation and things like that, I would find that would be communication needs to have to happen with that. But I'm just thinking
maybe
in
just
terms of like how it can impact the relationship. When you don't have enough money, to do certain things, or you're not a very good budget planner, you're having more medical expenses pop up as it relates to diabetes, and how it can affect the relationship and cause stress levels from that end.
I think it's very hard today to not make it with two incomes.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, uh, I've been fortunate. My wife she worked through through the pregnancy, through having children and everything else. And so we've always had dual incomes from that standpoint. Now, we also made sure that, we had life insurance, we had disability insurance, we had things that, in case if I got sick, I was able to have income coming in to still bring in my source of income from that standpoint. But those are certain things you need to talk about from that. Okay, what happens if we do have children? And unfortunately, with the health care, the daycare cost and everything else, it's really tough. I mean, some people might be better off where one spouse stays at home versus paying for daycare. Mm-hmm. And then when the kids get into first grade, they can then go back to work. And so those are discussions you have to have early on and everything else. But what I find too is that when both spouses work a lot, the communication seems to be good because everything's not just focused on the kids or on the home. It's focused on a lot of other stuff. And then, you learn a lot of stuff too when you're out working in the real world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Besides getting a paycheck, that helps support your lifestyle and also the group benefits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, exactly.
So I don't know what to tell you there, Cam. From that standpoint.
Mean, it's just been a few instances, but from the research last episode, we were talking about more younger people are starting to get diabetes in their 20s. So when you look at that and they're thinking, oh gosh, now that's another expense. A lot of people stay on their parents' insurance till they're 26, which anytime we hire a young person and they say, oh, I'm still covered on my parents' insurance, I say, stay on your parents' insurance as long as you can, or until they let you.
Did you talk to their parents about that?
I let them deal with it. I just say, here are our plans. I think having a company with a good health insurance, plan is really key as well. Especially when you're looking
there's a lot of good choices out there, from that you can get. I mean, they still call it the Obamacare and stuff like that. Yeah, it might be a higher deductible, but it covers preventative stuff, those types of things. And so there's other options available from that standpoint. I mean, the one thing, and I always try to, feel like since I lost my left eye and I was disabled, for about 2 years, I feel like disability income, and most people don't even pick that on their group benefit package. Mm-hmm. Especially short-term and long-term disability, your most important asset is your ability to earn income. Mm-hmm. And if you can't earn income because you're sick and hurt and not able to work, it's really going to have an impact, not just on you, but on your family. And that includes your spouse and your children.
Mm-hmm.
Most human resource directors don't talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Actually, well, I'm probably a rare one out of the few who go in depth of all the different benefits that we have. I sit down with them one-on-one.
That's good.
And I talk with them about this is what it covers, go down the list. But it's interesting, like you said, are you saying that if you're diabetic, you would really encourage, someone getting the long-term disability and the short-term disability?
Yeah. And as much group life insurance as they can get through their employer.
Mm.
So if all of a sudden you can you can buy supplemental and stuff like that. Go ahead and buy it. Let's say you're making $50,000 a year, the company's going to give you $50,000, but you have an option to buy $50,000. Go ahead and buy 5 times $50,000. Go ahead and buy 5 times that. Mm-hmm. So now all of a sudden you got $300,000 of coverage, and then when you do get married and then you have kids and stuff like that, you've already got it in place. Mm-hmm. Because trying to go out and buy it on the marketplace, it gets pretty tough when you got a cancer or you've got a health concern, high blood pressure, those types of things. It can get tough on individual stuff. But
I mean, and even having diabetes, looking at that, trying to get life insurance coverage outside can be a little difficult as well.
Yeah, because I pay 3 times the normal amount, mm-hmm. and I'm considered a well-controlled diabetic. Mm-hmm. So, but I wanted to protect my family, so I'll go ahead and pay the premium for it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, I think going back to the point though, with your relationships are relationships, and you just got to fill them out before things get serious. I think from what I see with the younger generation. I think a lot of spouses want to continue to keep working, mm-hmm. and they just got to figure out, okay, what do we do about childcare? Mm-hmm. Childcare is the most, I think, heaviest burden on young couples today, mm-hmm. and I wish they would do something in Congress to help, basically help pay for childcare, and that's another story, another topic, but. Those are just things that people are, I think people starting out are really struggling with. And, right. And then that leads to your point. Well, then, do I want to get married? Do I want to have kids? And some people don't want to do that either. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, my dating journey, at first I didn't want to have kids, but now I do want to have kids, know? We don't have to dive into the other aspects of the relationship and what from a sexual standpoint, how it can affect certain areas and things like that. But right. that is another area that maybe can cause some frustrations in relationships when it comes to having diabetes.
Yeah. Like I said, keep in mind, my sister. And your aunt Cindy, back in those days, they did not want her to get pregnant mm-hmm. because pregnancy, especially if you're a diabetic, those hormones and everything else, you're going through the roof, so it can right. really cause problems. So your aunt, she ended up not having children, but they adopted and stuff like that, and it was all because of having type 1 diabetes. Mm-hmm. Now. They can, with the pump and everything else. I've got a lot of clients, and I've got a niece that's had 2 kids, and she's doing fine, mm-hmm. With her diabetes and stuff like that. But yeah, for women back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, it was frowned upon to get pregnant mm-hmm. as a type 1 diabetic. So, yeah. And then going back to your point earlier about pregnancy, diabetes and stuff like that. If a lot of people don't watch that and they gain a lot of weight and all of a sudden they're with the baby and eating and stuff like that, then all of a sudden they have the child, but then the diabetes doesn't go away. Right. So that's why you'll see a lot of pregnant women. This is my opinion. I'm not an expert, but, I think that's why you'll see a lot of pregnant women immediately start to lose the weight and everything else in case if they did have the type 1 the pregnancy diabetes, that goes away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because I found that as an interesting stat too, that even though it can appear during the pregnancy, if they don't make any changes, then boom.
It can stay on.
It can stay on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but
we've been doing pretty good on time already.
Yeah, we have.
We haven't solved any of your dating problems, so I think we're doing okay.
No, it's fine. Actually, I put a pause on my dating, so I could really focus in on my health and things like that. So I'm almost ready to get back out there again, but
Yeah.
I still want to do some more work. But I think, like you said, it's all about feeling good about yourself and feeling confident and educating yourself and knowing what you can have, what you can't have, and testing, as we've said many
Yeah.
times before on this podcast, because no one can tell me what I can't have that I haven't already, experienced myself.
Well, don't worry about it. I mean, when you buy this or you go into this and that and the other, you know, that shouldn't affect you at all as a diabetic. Even if that person buys these things or whatever, you don't have to eat it.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
it's not, they're not buying it and automatically putting it into your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
You're the one's going to put it in the mouth.
Yeah. But
And
you
so
can see how some people might feel that, well, God,
I don't
that person
I can't really see that.
I know
I've
you,
never.
you you probably can't, but there are probably people out there who are thinking, well, shit, did they even care about my health at all? They're buying all these Twinkies, ding dongs, donuts, and hell, like, what am I
Well,
supposed to
don't
eat?
hey, don't worry. When I was growing up,
I'm not saying for
when
me,
I
but
was
I'm saying,
growing up, your dad and my little sister and everything else, they got to eat all that stuff. I didn't have
hmm
to. I had to sit there
hmm
and eat my celery and stuff like that. So
hmm
it is what it is.
But
It's
what I'm saying is, like, in a marriage or in a relationship, when two people are living together, if one person has, diabetes and the other person has it, how one person may feel like if they're buying all this junk food, how one person can feel, I was like, do you care about my diabetes or not? Even though you don't have to eat.
why are you looking for that person to make you feel better?
I'm not, and this is
No,
not
no,
me. This is
yes,
not.
you are. Yes,
No,
you are.
I'm just saying. I do feel it's important, though, to be mindful of your other person's feelings in the relationship when it comes to your
I think you're
diabetes.
worrying about it too much.
I'm not. I mean, people. I'm just saying. I think you have to be mindful, at least. I mean, that's me.
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
know if you can get what I'm saying. It's
I
like if
well no, just because I think people get a little bit oversensitive because somebody says or does something that really might not have an effect on them, but they think it has an effect on
well,
them.
I am a Pisces, so I do get a little. I can be a little overthinkish. That's
Well,
my number one problem, which I've worked on a lot. But
I'm a Virgo, so I'm a lover.
um, I did hear I did see some exciting news, and I shared it with you to get off topic a little bit, and we can dive into this on another episode. But how it's being proposed, as we talked about it last episode, about pharmaceutical commercials not getting played in other countries and how they're played in the United States. I saw that they're trying to pass a bill to get to not have these prescription drugs so much or even have them on
Yeah.
television.
Well,
So,
I was meeting with a client of mine, a doctor client of mine yesterday, and we were talking about that. And he said, yeah, he said he wishes that they wouldn't have that because everybody comes in and they want to try this drug, they want to try that, this, and he's got
mhm,
to kind of educate them on what's all happening, what that drug, going back to the cause and effect. That's
yeah,
what, and so it's to me, but they can still Google it, this and that and the other. But that's how, going back, more money. And this is another statistic. The pharmaceutical companies started lobbying to Congress way back in the 1950s,
mhm,
but it really amped up where they really started putting money into lobbyists in the 1990s and 2000s. And so that's what you're seeing because they want more drugs out there because that's how they make money.
mhm,
They make money off of off of people getting sick.
mhm,
And the more you can stay sick, the more money they make.
yeah. Well,
And so,
I'm seeing
but
more, and you're
and
probably
you keep advertising it, over and over again, and then basically you're having everybody come into the doctor telling them they should be on this drug versus the doctor saying, I think you need to be on this drug.
Right, exactly. And I'm seeing more like the amount of the injectable pens that are out there now. It's crazy. What it was just like Mounjaro and Ozempic at the time, and now, gosh, I feel like there's about 7 or 8 different types of injections that you can do, and I'm like, is this a type 2 diabetes drug or is this a weight management type of drug? And I think what really hurt prices when it comes to treating diabetes, when it came to the Mounjaro and the Ozempic, was that, yes, it was used to treat type 2 diabetes, but more people were using it as a weight loss supplement to lose weight. And they didn't even have it.
That's a new trend. And people don't understand that once you get off of it, you got to go right back on it.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing is, it was also
the weight comes back.
It drove up the prices too. For me, as a type 2 diabetic, because people would be paying even without insurance. I mean, those are thousands of dollars.
That's because of, everybody wants to look good.
Yeah.
It's Hollywood, baby. It's Hollywood. The only thing is, you remember that movie where Adam Sandler was the doctor with Jennifer Aniston? And that guy comes up and he was doing all the Botox and everything else. And guess what Mounjaro on that does? It does that to your face.
Really?
That's a side effect.
Oh, I didn't know that was a side effect.
Oh yeah, you'll start to get your eyes. They'll start. You have to go get a facelift. So look it up.
Glad I don't take Mounjaro anymore.
Well, I know.
I can't afford it anyways.
Well, but it's anything worthwhile comes hard.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing about it, and that all goes back to my thoughts on pharmaceuticals. All goes back to the food industry in America compared to other countries and everything else. It's mass production of food here, and the faster you can get it out of the ground and grow, or the faster you can get the pig to get fatter, regardless of what you're putting in there or putting on the ground, and the animals and everything else are walking all in the chemicals and all that. I go back to 2 of our dogs have died from cancer. And you know what the veterinarian said? It's because of the chemicals in the ground, and dogs with their paws, they're so sensitive with their paws. When they're out there walking on that stuff, it soaks up into their paws. And then all of a sudden they start to develop cancer when they're about 10, 11 years of age. And so you got to think about that. Well, if they're getting cancer from there, and now I've been eating corn and they're putting the same kind of stuff down on the corn to get it to grow faster, I wonder why the cancer rates are going up. So we'll probably be banned after this podcast, but that's
my final part, getting back to the relationships. Have you ever been stressed or depressed because of your diabetes, and how's that ever affected your relationship?
You're always, you kind of worry about it and stuff like that. And, from that standpoint, that's where being married to a nurse, because anytime you're a bedside nurse, which my wife has been, they're dealing with, or an ER nurse or anybody working in ER, you're dealing with that chaos, not just one person, but everybody that walks in or is in the hospital bed. Mm-hmm. So it's just have somebody that, can help deal with the chaos is what I'm thinking. And it comes a little bit more easily with age, but it's just one of those things. You got to figure out what's happening. And, but then also too, you as the diabetic, you need to say, hey, I feel, very stressful and my sugars might be going higher and this and that and the other. And because stress does affect your diabetes blood sugar. And so, there's those types of things I think you just got to work through them is the way I got to say, life is just two partners going through. Marriage is just two partners going through life and trying to make that partnership grow, thrive, and prosper. And it's going to have its setbacks sometimes. And maybe diabetes has an effect to it too, but there's other things that happen to people, like losing a job, changing jobs, a miscarriage, those types of things. You're always going to have crosses to bear. And that's where I think where faith comes into play. Mm-hmm. I really think faith comes into play and believing in a higher being and trying to be thankful, try to be thankful for everything, even if it's a tough road. Because if you really think about what Christ went through, persecution and everything else, and that cross he carried, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to, carry our cross. But great thing about if you're religious is you can ask the Holy Spirit, you can ask God and Jesus, Mary and Joseph to help you carry the cross. Or, Simeon again, from that standpoint. So there's, I think faith is I will say faith is what's helped me get through, having diabetes now going on 57 years. So luckily for me, I was blessed that I was, God let me be born in a good family.
Amen.
And our families had a lot of share of health problems.
Yeah. I mean, that's another diabetes, genetic, not genetic.
I don't really think it is, from that standpoint. That'd be good if we get the doctor I want on here, we can ask him and stuff like that. I mean, I'll never forget my pediatrician client and friend. She basically, they came out and they said, hey, you can test your kids to see if they're diabetic, this and that and the other. And so I talked to me and my wife and I said, and I asked her, I said, Deb, and I want to have her on the podcast too, because being a pediatrician to treat a lot of type 1 diabetics. But I said, Deb, what would you do and everything else? Because I don't really want them to know. She goes, well, if they're going to get it, they're going to get it. So why, try to do something? Because whatever they've come out with, giving them a little bit of insulin or this and that and the other, it's not going to eventually prevent it. So why do it? Why would you want to know?
Right.
So, now you can start to do all these things and say, well, that you've seen the stuff advertised and that or coming out on the news about, well, there's 7 things you can take this blood thing and it will determine if you have cancer or not. Mm-hmm. And then, okay, well, what can I do? So I think with AI and stuff like that, it's going to make things resolvable quicker. And that's the good part of AI. I also think there's going to be a lot of bad part, like all the scams and the fraud that's happening with AI.
Yeah.
And so, exactly. But I really think AI, and I really think research in other other countries, I think that's where, we might see cures coming out and about.
Mm-hmm. I'd love for that to happen. That would be great.
I mean, I know you sent me something about something over in England. They were doing this and with stem cells.
It was in China actually, and stem cell research and implanting stem cells in someone who was a type 1 diabetic.
Yeah.
And seeing that it had kind of cured them. So. Yeah. I want to do more research into that, but yeah. I think that's a very interesting case. No, I
agree with you. I mean, there's technology is good until it goes bad.
Exactly. So, well, on that note, I think our next podcast we will try to get a guest on. We'll have a guest on. If you want to be a guest, if you're a doctor, you listen to us, nurse. We'd love to hear from you. diabetesrway@gmail.com. Follow us on YouTube and Instagram. We do post on LinkedIn as well. I do it through my own personal LinkedIn portfolio. But we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to get a guest on. And it is sugar check time.
I'm a 90.
I am at 100. So
all right.
Doing great.
So average. Yeah, I've had pretty much been in the range. Been in the range the whole day.
You gotta move it over.
No.
It's all right. There we go. Okay, I saw it there. Yours is definitely more of a flatter line. So that's
I had yogurt. I had yogurt for lunch and a salad for yogurt for breakfast and salad for lunch.
Nice. I had 3 eggs for breakfast this morning and some coffee. So
I did have some coffee. So I've been drinking water all day long.
This is my water jug. I drink about one and a half of these a day, and I put some lemon in it.
Yeah, going back to Robert F. Kennedy, we won't talk about I'm drinking out of a plastic bottle. All the plastic is in my head. All right, Cam, I guess we ought to say adios.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to us. Please like and subscribe. Yeah. Follow us on Instagram. Email us. We'd love to hear from you.
Okay. Well, have a great day, all you diabetics out there.
Yeah. Take it easy.
Yeah, and please subscribe and tell your friends, especially.
And we'd love to hear your stories, too. We'd love to hear your stories.
Send us an email.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's that email again?
It is diabetesrway@gmail.com.
Okay. All right, Cam. We'll let you go.
Okay.
I love you.
Love you too.
See you.
Bye.